Hello, fellow adventurers. Welcome to Endless Fridays with Nina, the travel podcast where we inspire, share, and explore the world of travel. I'm your host, travel enthusiast, and chief daydreamer Nina, and I'm thrilled to have you join me. Today, we have a special VIP boarding pass for you. Meet travel enthusiast and adventurer Lisa. She will be sharing some of her memorable hiking adventures with us today. Please give a warm virtual welcome to Lisa.
Hey, I'm Lisa. I'm a woman that lives in the Metro Detroit area. I'm in my 30s. I do work a lot like everybody else does. But when I'm not working, I love to travel. And one of the things I like to do as well is go hiking. And so today I'm going to talk about mixing the two together.
Love that, Lisa. Again, thank you for joining us today. I'm just going to get into my questions here. So, what inspired you to start hiking?
So I have always had an interest in nature. I feel like a lot of it has to deal with my upbringing. Growing up, my parents would always take my brother and I to the local metro park or state park. We did some travels when I was a little girl to different national parks. So for me, hiking is just a natural interest to me. I just love being out in nature and just kind of breaking the mold and getting out and away from computers, the office setting, and just kind of resetting the mind.
I love that. So, just a chance to decompress and step away from the hustle and bustle. So I too hike, but I started later in life, I would say. The more memorable hikes have been in my adult years. So just love this sharing here. I'm very excited to hear about your hiking experiences. And, maybe you will inspire me to step into some of the hiking trails that you have stepped on. Um,
Absolutely.
how would you say you choose the trails that you hike?
So in this case, for this trip, I went with a couple of friends. So you really have to think about different physical capabilities of everybody within the group. Um, I went with some people that were on the more fit side, so we were able to do more technical trails. But a lot of it also has to deal with the weather at the time. So there's a pretty good website or app called alltrails.com,
Mm.
and it will tell you the conditions of the trail recently for people that have been on it. They'll tell you if a trail is very technical, difficult, or if it's easy, but maybe it's been really muddy because maybe there was a lot of rain at some point. Um, or they may give some pretty good recommendations of good, easy trail, but maybe bring some spikes if it's icier, if you're up in the mountains, which is something that you also need to consider. So a lot of it is just how much time do I want to dedicate to doing a trail? What are the weather conditions like, which affects how the trail will be, and then also physical ability.
Okay. So I heard you mention spikes. Are those just an addition that you can put on your shoes for hiking?
Yeah, so I haven't done too much hiking for winter, but if you're up in the mountains, it is something good to consider. But yeah, it's just like a chain that you can just put over your shoe, almost like a shoe cover.
Mhm.
And there's a brand particularly called Yak Tracks, which a lot of people like. Some of the national parks that are pretty mountainous or have high cliffs, they'll sell them in gift shops. So you can do that. For me, I find that yak tracks are just slightly a little bit out of my budget. Unfortunately, a lot of hiking things are a little bit expensive.
Mm-hmm.
So I just went on Amazon and just got like a generic spike that you just put on your shoes, and it worked great for me on this trip.
Awesome. Now, have you purchased a hiking pole? That's what I'm gonna call it.
Yeah, I
Like
did get trekking poles.
okay.
I don't use it too much in general, but I do find that if you are going up and down for a long period of time for hours, I feel like it kind of helps your back out a little bit.
Okay.
Especially if there's
Mhm.
some uphills that you need to do. I think it just gives you good leverage.
Okay.
Um, yeah, I think for some people they found that it takes the edge off a little bit from the stress of hiking.
Okay.
That's not to say that you absolutely need trekking poles.
Hmm.
I've definitely done a lot of long hikes without them. I just think maybe some people enjoy just having that little extra advantage.
So I can recall in Costa Rica and Grenada most recently that the hills were pretty steep. So that hiking pole or trekking pole was very beneficial. Just to keep my balance. But yes, I can definitely see too the benefit to helping with keeping your back aligned and upright as much as you can when hiking for sure.
I think honestly, sometimes on the downslope it helps a little bit too because
Mm-hmm.
you're just so much like on those legs.
Mm-hmm.
It does take a lot out of like your quads. So I just think maybe like just having something to grip onto can help a little bit too.
Yeah, definitely agree with that as well. Some sort of cushion or support when you're going downhill as well. Okay. What's the most challenging hike you've ever done to date?
Uh, okay. So the trail that I'm about to mention was not difficult in technicality, but it was mentally difficult
Mm,
for me. So this canyon trip that we're kind of going to talk about today, um, when I was in the Grand Canyon, you start off on the rim at the very top and you work your way down. So already you are more than a mile in elevation. And the cliffs are pretty steep, in the sense of like, the drop offs, like the trail is 6 feet wide
mm,
and there's no like gentle downhill slope if
mm,
you were to come up. It's just straight down. So, if you are afraid of heights, which I actually am quite a bit, it kind of played with my mental game a little bit. Just knowing that, oh, if I have a misstep, this is an assured, like, I am going down a mile.
mm,
Um, so that played with my head mentally. That said, though, it's really difficult to try to you have to really not be paying attention for you to fall off those trails.
mm.
Um, I would say it maybe was difficult coming up just because, like, as you come down, obviously there's stairs and everything, and there's like slopes, and you do have to work your way up. So that part made me coming up as difficult. But mentally, it was actually easier for me because I'm no longer looking down and seeing how deep assured
Mm.
death is away from me.
Okay.
So looking up, just like not seeing the bottom was actually mentally helpful for me.
Okay.
So I would say like if you are afraid of heights, but you want to do something like in the canyons that starts up high up and then goes down, definitely go with a friend to sort of be your cheerleader and stay close to the cliff walls. But I recommend maybe like just paying attention to the steps and not looking down because I think looking down really played with my head. And also, maybe spending an extra day or two earlier at the site that you want to hike at to just adjust in your head.
I like that, Lisa. So you and I are in the same boat. I am afraid of heights.
Oh yeah.
But it's for me, it is like you said as well. So we're sounds like we're exactly the same. I'm afraid of heights, and it's that narrow space. If I don't have enough, you know, enough room to move, then I start to feel confined with that narrow space. And I'm like you, I'm like, oh my gosh, if I step this way, I might fall. But yeah, it's funny how the mind works with that. I love roller coasters.
Uh,
I can do that all day. But when you have me on land and it's narrow like that, then that becomes a problem for me. So, but how do you?
personally, I personally like do not go on trails that are like less than, you know, several feet wide.
Hmm.
If it's that, yeah.
Hmm.
But there are some trails at some national parks where there is a chain to hold on to because it is so narrow, and I try to avoid those as much as possible. I
Okay.
I mentally cannot. That's not to say I won't ever one day, but currently it's not on my radar at the
Okay.
moment.
And I love your tip about, just exploring the site ahead of time to take it in. I love that as a tip, especially for a new hiker, right? So they can, just get a feel and take it all in.
Yes.
All right. So, have you ever encountered any wildlife while hiking?
Um, so I have, but nothing like dangerous, if you will. So even just in general, like hiking and some trails up north in Michigan, I have run into some deer. Um, I want to say ran into maybe some like birds, if you will. Nothing like pretty benign animals. I do know some friends that when they did hiking in Isle Royale, they ran into some moose, which I heard are pretty aggressive.
Ooh.
Uh, yeah. But for me, no, if anything, it's mostly just like deer, which are pretty, they're afraid of people, so they're not really going to approach you.
Yeah.
Um, so I have not run into anything dangerous yet. I feel like though a lot of that has to do with the fact that when I'm hiking and with other people, so a lot of the wildlife are afraid of people in general, and I usually just stick to hiking during the day.
Okay.
And I feel like that also helps to with minimizing the amount of wildlife I run into. Um, there was a time with my family on a different trip when I was with my parents and my brother in the Smoky Mountains. We were kind of driving, and on one of the overlooks, we stopped, and there was a bear.
Oh, oh,
Um,
okay.
yeah, and it was a juvenile bear, so it wasn't quite vicious yet. I mean, it was a pretty tame bear, but we kept our distance and, you know, made sure that we didn't go anywhere near it and stayed in our cars because with a cub that young, we knew that Mama Bear was not too far away.
Mhm.
Um, but other than that, I really have not run into too much
Okay.
life.
Okay. So it's very interesting about the moose. I did not know that they were aggressive animals.
Yeah, I think especially depending where you're at, they're not very used to people. But yeah, they can be pretty aggressive and they're super large.
Mhm.
So if you see a moose, definitely leave them some space.
Okay. So I was wondering initially when I asked that question if you saw any bears or coyotes, because I think those are two of the animals that, most people are hoping not to see. And then even with camping, right, you have bears around. When I went to Pigeon Forge, at the cabins that they have there are bears all around. Thankfully, I didn't see any on the visit that I had. But it is important to know about animal safety, and bear safety is a thing. So I'm sure that moose safety is a thing as well, and coyote safety. So I'm glad that you brought that up. Just to let our viewers know about having some sort of awareness about the wildlife. So appreciate that tip.
Oh yeah. And there is something that you can buy at hiking stores, which is you can have bear spray.
Oh, cool.
And so I do have a friend that he hikes all the time and he keeps bear spray on his backpack right here. So
Okay.
if you grab it, he can just rip it off and use it.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And then, I haven't done this myself, but I did hear that if you just have like a little tiny well,
Mm.
sometimes that's enough to kind of scare away some wildlife if they
Okay.
hear some noise.
Okay.
I personally don't do that. But I'm sure that there are some other tips out there that a more expert person can give you about how to kind of scare away the wildlife so that you don't run into something.
So, and as you're saying that, I'm thinking of like some sort of horn, maybe, that'll scare them away as well. Um, I am going to do a little bit of research on this, so that I can share with the viewers, and there will be some links to a few of the items we've been talking about, just in case they want to check it out if they need any essentials for hiking. I am going to drop it in the description so they'll have some recommendations between the two of us, because I've
Yeah.
been taking some mental notes of the things that you have mentioned. Okay. So, what's your favorite hiking trail to date and why?
Oh man, that's such a tough question.
Mm.
There are definitely places like national park wise, I wish I could explore more just because we were so constrained with time. But out of the ones I've enjoyed the most, on my canyon trip out west, I would have to say Grand Canyon was probably my favorite, even though mentally being up that high was difficult for me. It's just, you're just surrounded by breathtaking views. There is no spot that you look at that, isn't just gorgeous and stunning. Um, I really loved being out in Zion. It just is totally different. Um, I really can't compare it to anything out here. Like living in Michigan, there's just really nothing quite like that. But in terms of Michigan, I really loved hiking out by the Porcupine Mountains, and there is a trail. I think they call it the Lake Superior Trail. Part of it runs along Lake Superior, but then some of it also kind of runs along Lake of the Clouds at some point. So you get this really beautiful view up above of this just, you know, big lake. And it's just kind of nice to see that water too, as well, of Lake Superior. So there were a couple of trails in Lake, up in Mountains that I really enjoyed. Um, yeah, locally, in the Metro Detroit area, I do live close to Stony Creek, and so there's just like a small one that I head up every couple of months. That it's basically like it's called Lakeview Point, but I usually like park nearby and I walk around. just kind of like hike a little bit and then come back. I especially love doing it in the fall so you can see all the color changes. So um, the colors here are starting to turn a little bit, so I'm sure I'll be out just going for a walk through the woods in the next couple of weeks.
Awesome. So this is exactly why I wanted to bring you in during this time for the fall foliage. I know there are a number of places that are just so beautiful to hike in during this time of year. Lisa, I am so happy that you were able to share some beautiful photos with me prior to coming on. I have looked through all of your photos, so spoil alert for me. But I am also a fan of your photography. So it was very nice just to go through all of the photos. What I did was I selected eight, I believe, eight different photos just as some highlights of your trip, which I have not really totally introduced here. I'm just going to hand it over to you for an introduction of the trip that you took for your hiking adventures, and then we'll take a look at the pictures that you sent.
Yeah, so this was a trip that I did with three other people. We took about 10 days where we flew to Vegas, rented a car, and we did a bit of a Western Canyon trip of the Southwest. So we hit Grand Canyon, um, we did Monument Valley, we stopped at Horseshoe Bend, and then we did Bryce and Zion for half a day, and then finished off at Valley of Fire State Park, which is right outside of Vegas. So we did like a little bit of a loop from Nevada to Arizona and back.
Wow. So this was a week-long trip? How long was the trip?
It was 10 days, a
Okay.
solid 10 days.
Okay. Nice. Did you guys factor in rest days or
We did a little bit. So our first night there, like on this trip in Vegas, we didn't do anything too crazy because we knew we were landing at some point in the afternoon. We did kind of do a short hiking trip, about an hour or 2 hours, but it wasn't anything extensive. And because we knew we were going to do a lot of driving around, because a lot of these parks are like 3, 4, 5 hours apart, we had to factor in drive times. And from Vegas to the Grand Canyon, for example, we stopped at Flagstaff for an overnight just so that it wasn't such a long, crazy day. And then we also did, when we were in Monument Valley, we kind of took like a half day to just sort of recuperate a little bit, not push it too much. So there were some places that we definitely took our breaks. Bryce, we spent 3 days in Bryce, and there was a solid half day where we were just very lazy, took naps in the hotel room, went into the hot tub. So there was definitely some resting during this trip.
nice. Nice. So, we have your first picture here that you shared. Beautiful. This is like something you would see in an advertisement. So can you share something about this photo here?
Yeah, so this is Valley of Fire State Park. It is only about a 45-minute drive right outside of Las Vegas. And this was actually one of our last stops on our canyon trip. It was actually the last canyon trip, if you will. Um, but it's a really fun park. It feels like it's a little bit out of nowhere. but it's just a really cool place. Everywhere you go, it's like this red rock type area. There's so many trails. There are some trails where you can walk along and you'll see petroglyphs, so different art that was put on there by Native Americans a while back. And there's just so many cool structures. There are like canyons, small canyons that you can kind of get into. There's like a wave-like rock that's also there. And this road, this is literally what it looks like when you're driving through the road. It's just really cool. It feels like you're on Mars. It's like a big rec playground. And because it does look like Mars, a couple of films have actually filmed out there. So like Star Trek has done some scenes on there. Total Recall did a couple of scenes at that park. And there's some other sci-fi shows and movies that have still filmed out there because it does look kind of crazy, out of this world. It's just a really fun place.
So as you were speaking, Lisa, I because I think for this particular area, I pulled up two or three photos. So I wanted to jump ahead to the next photo. This itself right here looks Mars-like to me, but again, just so beautiful.
Uh,
What kind of camera do you have?
I had an older Canon T3i Rebel series. That's what this camera was taken off of. I also work with a Sony camera, and I use like an older Nex 3 model. So these are models that have been out for at least 10 years. I don't really have anything up to date, just simply because lately, with phones getting so much better, sometimes I prefer to just use the phone. It's a lot lighter and easier to carry around. But yeah, I just nothing too fancy, just like your typical digital camera um series.
Nice.
And then just bringing different lenses, different size lenses. So that's what I use if I want to get into like a lot of photography when I'm out hiking.
Nice. So was there?
Um,
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
oh, so I was gonna say, so this picture right here, which was taken off of my Canon camera, is at Zion National Park. I actually think Zion is one of my favorite national parks I've ever been to. It's just beautiful. It's so different. And you start from the ground and go up into the mountain range if you were to ever hike. But this is just flat on a trail. You can access this easily right off the road. You don't really need to be an avid hiker to be able to see this. So this is like the lower Emerald pools, and they call it Emerald because the water looks green, and it's just beautiful and very peaceful to just kind of sit there and get the mountains, look at the water. It's just a really peaceful place.
I love it. Love it.
So this picture is also part of Valley of Fire, and it's again, you're just kind of like driving through, and it's just you just see these really cool rock formations. Um, Sometimes the rock isn't as red, but we were really lucky that day because it was overcast. And I think with it being overcast, the sun didn't really bleach out the colors to the eye. So the colors were just really vivid and popping out that day. So we got really lucky. But yeah, it just, again, Mars Rock Playground. It's just a fun place to be.
So beautiful.
Oh, so this picture is um, halfway down a trail in Grand Canyon. So the trail specifically that I took was the South Kaibab Trail, and you can actually go all the way down to the very bottom, and kind of be at the same level of the Colorado River.
Wow.
I did not decide that to do that because it really does take a full day if you were to go from where I am to the bottom and back up. And I was moving so slow. I was like moving at the speed of molasses because I was just like afraid I was going to fall off the trail at any second, even though I was nowhere near death at any point. Uh, but like mentally, I just needed to have more time.
Mhm.
So um, I just went halfway down the trail. So this is what it looks like when you're just kind of like right in the,
Okay, halfway
uh,
down. Okay, that's
yeah, and it's just seriously like there's really not a bad view anywhere you look. It's just beautiful.
yeah, it's real nice.
So this is Monument Valley. It's kind of in a secluded area in Arizona, I believe, like right near the border. And believe it or not, this picture was actually taken off of a parking lot. So
Oh, really? Oh, wow.
yeah, like this is the view from a parking lot. It's crazy. Like the visitor center to Monument Valley, I believe it's a visitor center or hotel. It's right there. And this is the scene from a parking lot. It's kind of crazy. But a lot of Monument Valley belongs to Native American land, or it's Native American land. So you do have to pay to get on to like the trails around those structures. But what's so cool about that area in Arizona is it's really hard to explain. It's almost like desolate. Like it's just very flat and red and sandy. And there were literally tumbleweeds going across the road as we were driving in this area. Like we literally were counting tumbleweeds.
Oh, wow.
Um, but these structures are just so tall and massive. Like it's really hard to explain the scale of how large these structures are. Um, but it's just really crazy how erosion just like you have all these flat areas, but then you still have these like they call them buttes or sometimes they're called mesas, where they're just like you just have this really cool tall stadium structure that still is remaining somehow, even though everything else is just flat and flat.
And I mean, this is a picture perfect view right here from the parking lot. So
Yeah.
if you were
So
not into
sorry.
hiking, if you were not into hiking, you can still just take in the views just from the parking lot. So,
Yeah, it's really cool. And part of Monument Valley, you don't even like if you want to drive through this whole park area, you can do it without leaving your car. Like
nice.
there, I think like 17 or 18 different structures on this one particular car trail that you can do. And so you can see these like beautiful, massive structures as you drive. It's just so cool. I know, like when you think about the Wild Wild West, you kind of think of a little bit like the desert land like this.
Mm-hmm.
And there are some movies like when you think of old Western movies, you think of John Wayne.
Mm-hmm.
John Wayne actually filmed a few movies here. And I think there's a couple, I think Metallica even, one of the big, like iconic metal bands even filmed a music video like on top of one of these structures. Like
That's
it's
cool.
just super cool.
That is cool. Wow.
Yeah.
This was one of my favorite pictures. Again, I pulled some of my favorites from what you sent, but this was one of my favorites. Is that a
Yeah.
bird on the corner?
Let
What is that on the corner?
let me see. So, sorry, so it's like cut off a little bit in this
Is it?
picture.
Is it?
Yeah.
Am I able to? Are you able to see?
Bird.
It looks like a bird, right?
Actually, it is. Um, Let me see if I can pull it up right here to my cell phone. Oh yeah, the bottom right corner. Yeah,
Yeah.
okay. So okay. Sorry, blooper reel.
No, no, no worries. So that is a bird on the bottom right corner.
No, it's not actually.
What is it?
So that thing in the bottom right is actually a boat. It's a cruise boat.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so you can take a tour on these boats, and it goes along the river, and that whole like structure is called Horseshoe Bend.
Okay.
So that kind of gives you a good idea of the scale of how large this thing is.
Okay. Nice. That would be a nice boat tour.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
nice.
I kind of wish in hindsight that we did something cool like a boat tour. But my friends and I, we were both on a schedule and a budget, so we didn't really explore that too much.
Okay.
Um, but I kind of wish we did a little
Nice.
bit.
Nice.
Um, but yeah.
That's nice.
Again, this is another structure that was in Monument Valley. Just another cool structure. Like you just drive around, and every once in a while you see something beautiful and grand like that. You'll never see anything like that in Michigan.
No.
Uh, yeah, it's just super cool.
Not another like I said, picturesque view here. Um I'm looking closely and I'm just gonna use my cursor, but i- is there anything like um I guess like a fence or anything around this area?
Mm. No, they just trust that you respect the structures.
Okay. Okay.
But as far as I saw, there really wasn't any fencing.
Mm.
Um, there occasionally there's like fencing along like the perimeter of the valley itself,
Okay.
just so that you know that you're walking into like private land, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and it's kind of cool. You may even see like the occasional like herd of wild horses on that land. It's really cool. Um, but at the same time, there is a massive fine if you disrespect the land. It's definite like there's definitely a penalty. So I think the fact that people know that it's Native American land, combined with the fact that there's a huge, massive penalty if you do any kind of damage to the structures, most people are very respectful and don't really try to do anything crazy.
Okay. Yep, understood. I'm sure there is a massive fine for that.
So this is Bryce National Park. It's on the top of the rim, and one of the my favorite things about this photo is when my friends and I went, we went early March. And so we were high enough up in elevation and still kind of like within the snowing season for the park to get a lot of snow. And so when we went to Bryce, that area had just gotten a few feet of snow, like right before we got there. And even when we were there, they did get a few more inches of snow,
Wow.
which was a little bit of a bummer in the sense that most of the trails were completely closed
Mm,
because, it's just too much of a liability for people to go down. You're always worried about avalanche.
yeah.
But in terms of like a visual standpoint, it was just so beautiful to have that beautiful, pristine white snow
Hmm.
and like this orange, like hoodoo like structures. So you see those like vertical structures that are like kind of jutting up. We call them hoodoos.
Okay.
And it's just super cool to see that contrast of color between the rock of the canyon and then the white snow. And then you have this beautiful, beautiful blue sky.
Yeah,
Um, I just like love how it just so happened to be that it was just like the most picturesque moment in time.
definitely. This reminds me of a Hallmark Christmas movie.
Oh yeah. I can see that for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yep. All right. Actually, the last picture that I had from your sharings. Again, just beautiful photos all around. It was hard for me to pick. But again, I think I narrowed it down to 8 for some highlights to share with our viewers. Just a little recap here, Lisa. You had your hiking adventures. It was 10 days. You went from uh Nevada parks to Arizona parks. We didn't even touch on all of the parts that you hiked in and visited. So we just really touched the surface of some key highlights that I saw just in the photos. And then you talked about, some of the items that you might want to consider, like the spikes for your shoes as an add-on. We talked about the hiking pole or the trekking pole, just in case you need a little bit of extra support. And then you also talked about the intensity of the hike. So I love that you mentioned that as well, because if you have kids, some people take their pets if they're even allowed on some of the hikes. I'm not, even though I have been on a number of hikes to date, I am not an expert by far. So, and I have never taken my dog on a hike, but just other things to consider. Um, Anything else here? You also talked about the weather conditions, taking that into consideration. Looks like you traveled in March, and I'm not going to say got caught in a little bit of snow, but you had a mixture of the change and transition in the seasons. And, as a hiker, as a new hiker as well, maybe the weather and conditions are something that you would want to consider. And then you also mentioned, which I don't remember the name offhand, but you also mentioned the website where um, the viewers can go and actually look at the hiking trail conditions. So I love that. I love that you mentioned that. I will make sure to get that capture in the description for our travelers here.
Absolutely. I, I would say too, while you're hiking, definitely get a nice hiking backpack that has room to put in a water bladder. Something that can hold at least 2 liters of water with a hose that goes through the strap, just so that it's easier for you to carry your water that way. Um, and some of these parks, they don't have water readily available at all points. So that is something to consider. Having something that can hold a large amount of water just in case, you never know. And sometimes you don't realize how thirsty or how hot you might get as you hike. So you definitely want to bring a lot of water. So get a good backpack that has enough room for that. And stop at a grocery store before you actually get to where you need to be so that you can just load up on snacks. I love like Cliff Bars. You can do energy shells, nuts, whatever you need. But something that has a lot of calories in it, but some grains, something filling. And just pack that in your bag. Because sometimes when you're hiking, a lot of these places are so remote, so it's not going to be easy to go to a restaurant, for example. So you really need to think about where some grocery stops are and just load up and put that into your backpack.
Nice. Okay. All right. Well, I definitely want to get your hiking essential recommendations so that I can share with our viewers here. And
Absolutely.
and there you have it, YouTube family. A big shout out to Lisa for sharing with us today. Thank you so much, Lisa, for stopping through. Until next time, keep those passports handy and your hearts wide open. This is Nina signing off from Endless Fridays. Live like every day is Friday. Please give a warm virtual welcome to Lisa. Uh-oh. Please give a warm virtual welcome to Lisa. It did it again. It did it again. Okay, I gotta pause that.